There was something comforting about our street, the kind of place where neighbors nod knowingly and kids ride their bikes in lazy loops until the porch lights come on. I used to think of it as a little world where nothing bad could sneak in. Daniel and I fit right in. We were the couple people waved at with that "you two are perfect" kind of smile. He had this easy charm that turned strangers into friends. And me? I was just happy. Quietly happy. I believed in what we had. I believed in him. But lately, things started to feel off. Not in a dramatic soap opera way, just these little changes that only someone who truly knows would notice. Daniel began spending more time in the yard, pruning plants that didn't need it, fussing over the grass like it held secrets. He'd spritz on cologne to run quick errands on a Sunday. And when I asked him what we needed from the store, he'd forget. Every time. I didn't accuse him. I didn't cry. I just filed it away. A part of me already knew. I just hadn't admitted it yet. And then there was Natalie. Always smiling. Always too close. She had a way of talking like she'd known you for years. Too friendly. Too familiar. She started popping up whenever Daniel was outside, offering lemonade, asking about our hydrangeas, laughing a little too long at his jokes. My skin prickled every time I saw her lean against our fence. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I could feel the shape of the truth forming. And once you feel that shift, you can't unfeel it. You start watching and waiting. I started noticing the little things first. His phone turned face down more often, texts he'd clear out before I ever had the chance to glance. And the way his voice would change when Natalie called out from across her yard. Softer, almost younger. He'd laugh in that boyish way I hadn't heard in a long time, like he wanted to impress her. It was strange how quickly my own home began to feel like a stage. I wasn't watching my husband anymore. I was watching a version of him perform, and the audience wasn't me. At night, he still kissed me on the cheek, still asked if I needed anything, still lay beside me with the same steady breath he always had. But I felt it, the absence, like trying to sleep next to a ghost of someone who used to love you. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and wonder when exactly things had started to unravel. Was it something I said? Something I didn't? Or was it just the slow, silent betrayal of routine, of taking each other for granted, until someone new seemed shinier? The worst part was pretending. Pretending not to notice the way he lingered near the fence. Pretending Natalie wasn't always there, her laughter floating through our open windows like perfume you didn't ask to wear. I'd wave back at her too, like nothing was wrong. I'd offer her a smile with just the right amount of warmth. But inside, something was tightening. A knot of suspicion, of hurt, of quiet rage beginning to curl itself around my ribs. I didn't say a word, not yet. But I was paying attention now, with every cell in my body. I started to keep a mental journal, each moment, each odd glance, each too long smile. I wasn't paranoid. I was observant. There's a difference. When you've loved someone long enough, you feel the shift before you can explain it. Like a draft sneaking through a closed window. That's what Daniel had become. A draft in my life, still present, but no longer warm. And Natalie? She played her part well. Sweet enough to fool most, harmless enough to seem forgettable. But I was done underestimating her. The fence between our houses suddenly felt like more than just wood and nails. It became this strange stage where everything happened, half visible, half secret. I'd catch snippets of their conversations, harmless words on the surface. But his tone gave him away. The softness in it, the way he lingered before coming back inside, and I'd stand at the kitchen sink, hands in soapy water, heart pounding like a drum I couldn't quiet. I wasn't just listening, I was collecting. Not facts, not yet, but energy, instinct, truth, in its rawest form. That was the moment I stopped wondering and started planning. Because deep down, I already knew where this was going. I could feel it in my bones, the slow, awful certainty of betrayal. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. That's not who I am. If they thought they were clever, they hadn't seen clever yet. I didn't know exactly what I'd do. Not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done pretending not to see. And if they wanted to dance across that fence, I'd be the one holding the spotlight. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I saw it. Nothing explosive, no kissing, no confessions. Just the two of them, standing by the fence, too close, too comfortable. Natalie tossed her head back, laughing like she was in a romantic comedy. Daniel leaned in, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. The worst part? It was all so casual. Like I wasn't even real. Like our marriage was just a costume he wore when he came inside. And in that moment, everything inside me went still. Not broken. Still. Later that night, I asked him where he'd been. Just to test the waters. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Had to run out for some light bulbs." That was it. No flicker of guilt, no hesitation, just smooth, practiced ease. And that's when I knew. He was lying without even trying. He'd done it before. He'd do it again. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt strategy. Because if he was bold enough to lie to my face, then I had every right to find the truth in my own way. So I went online, ordered a tiny hidden camera. Nothing fancy, just enough to do the job. I buried it deep among the rosemary bushes, tucked just right beneath a garden gnome he never noticed. I smiled the whole time I planted it, hands deep in the dirt. It felt strange, like preparing the soil for something new. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to catch. Maybe just confirmation. Or maybe I wanted them to see what betrayal looked like from the outside. I didn't know yet, but I knew I'd find out soon enough. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day I'd go about my routine like nothing had changed. Water the plants, answer emails, smile at neighbors. But underneath, I was wired. Hyper-aware. Every laugh from the yard made my skin crawl. Every creak of the back gate made my stomach clench. I found myself checking the camera feed like a woman checking a fever. Quiet. Obsessed. Waiting for the disease to reveal itself. I didn't want to catch them. I needed to. I needed the truth served raw. Undeniable. Daniel kept up his act. A kiss on the forehead. A casual "love you" before heading out to run his now daily errands. I played my part too, smiled, nodded, made his favorite coffee. Because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who stay calm, the ones who gather, who wait, who watch. I wasn't broken, I was sharpening. Something was changing in me, slowly, steadily, like a tide pulling back before the wave hits. And the longer I waited, the more sure I became. They weren't just cheating on me. They were underestimating me. A few days later, I reviewed the footage. I watched from my laptop in the laundry room, door closed, heart thudding like I was about to jump out of a plane. At first, nothing. Just birds, the wind, the soft sway of trees, and then them. Standing at the fence again, just like before. Her hand brushed his. He didn't move away. She said something that made him laugh. They looked around like teenagers skipping class. And then, God help me, they kissed. I paused the screen. Timestamp blinking. Proof. Cold and clear. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at the screen. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room and let the rage finally spill out. But another part, the louder part, stayed silent. Watching, rewinding, replaying, over and over. There they were, Daniel and Natalie, acting like our home was their playground. Like I was a ghost, a shadow, someone who'd already vanished. It was humiliating. But strangely, it was also liberating. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew, and that changes everything. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop, named it something innocent. Garden photos. Inside, I saved the clip, then another. I went back through the footage and began collecting every moment, every smile, every stolen glance that proved who they really were. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted documentation. Something that spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. If they thought this was just a fling, a secret giggle behind closed doors, they were about to learn what exposure feels like. That night, I lay beside Daniel, listening to his breathing, steady as ever. I turned slightly, just enough to watch his face in the dark. He looked so peaceful, so unaware. It was almost poetic. He had no idea that the person next to him wasn't his wife anymore. She was someone else now, someone patient, someone precise. And while he slept, I began to sketch the next steps in my mind. No shouting, no tears, just a slow, deliberate unraveling. One he'd never see coming. There's a strange clarity that comes with betrayal, like a fog lifting, but what you see is uglier than you imagined. I sat in front of my computer with the footage open, eyes fixed on the screen. My hands didn't shake, my breathing didn't change. What I felt wasn't sadness anymore. It was something colder, sharper. Every minute of that video was another thread I'd pull loose from the life they thought they could tangle behind my back. I watched them laugh, touch, sneak into my home like it was theirs. My sanctuary turned stage. I scrubbed through the clips, labeling them by date and time, cropping when necessary, adjusting the audio. I didn't need flair, just facts. And the facts were damning. Daniel, walking through the gate with a bottle of wine under his arm. Natalie, slipping off her shoes before stepping inside. Their silhouettes in my kitchen, their voices hushed. My home was in the background of their little affair, and the irony didn't escape me. The very walls he helped paint, the floors I scrubbed, the couch where we binge-watched comedies, those things became the backdrop of his lies. I gave the video a title, Friendly Neighbors, Uncut. A name simple enough to make people click, but cutting enough to make the message clear. I replayed the final cut one more time, watching the betrayal unfold from the lens I had planted, hidden in the soil they thought was neutral ground. This wasn't just about catching them anymore. This was about reclaiming my space, my truth, my voice. They wanted secrets? Fine. But I would give the truth its moment in the sun, and I'd make sure it burned. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to create a digital case file on her own husband, but here I was, exporting clips like a documentarian of my own collapse. And yet, it didn't feel like collapse. It felt like construction. Each frame, each timestamp, each angle was a brick in a new foundation. I watched them linger by the garden hose. I watched Natalie touch his arm like she owned it. And I watched Daniel, my Daniel, smile back like the vows we made were some old joke no one tells anymore. There was one moment I kept returning to. A short clip, barely 15 seconds long. Natalie brushing a strand of hair behind her ear while Daniel reached into his back pocket and handed her a key. My key. Our spare. The one we kept for emergencies. I paused the video there. That small gesture carried more weight than anything else. He hadn't just cheated. He'd handed her access. To me. To our home. To everything we'd built. That key felt like a bullet I didn't see coming. And it hit harder than any kiss or whisper ever could. I backed up the files twice, once on a flash drive, once in the cloud. I wasn't about to lose this to a glitch or an accidental deletion. No, this needed to live in more than one place. I was methodical, calm, detached in the way surgeons have to be before they cut. This wasn't about drama. This was about justice, about truth, stripped of excuses. I wasn't going to ask Daniel to explain. I wasn't going to cry at his feet. I was going to do something far more effective. I was going to let the neighborhood see who they really were. I stared at that finished video like it was a letter I'd never wanted to write. No narration. No edits for sympathy. Just raw, time-stamped betrayal in full color. I didn't want to dramatize it. I wanted people to feel what I felt. Quiet disbelief, then the slow burn of rage crawling up the spine. I imagined them watching it the same way I had. First, confused, then, uncomfortable. And finally, furious. Not for me, but for themselves, because deep down, everyone knows someone who's lived this. Everyone's known a Daniel. Or worse, a Natalie. The plan came to me while I was weeding the garden. That same patch of rosemary where I'd hidden the camera in the first place. It felt almost poetic, really, pulling lies from the soil, making room for something new. The neighborhood had a WhatsApp group, a mailing list, a portal where people shared everything from lost pets to bake sale flyers. It was a small community, tight-knit, chatty, prone to gossip, which meant they were the perfect audience. They'd watched our love story bloom for years. Now they'd watch it rot in real time. That night, I drafted the message. Brief, anonymous. Nothing angry or desperate, just a link and a sender name that said it all. Laura, the wife. No subject line, no warning. Just a quiet little detonation set to go off the next morning. As I hovered over the send button, I didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. Because I wasn't just showing the truth. I was reclaiming the narrative. If they wanted to play their little game behind fences and locked doors, I'd simply change the rules. And I knew. Tomorrow, everything would change. By 7:12 a.m., the neighborhood was on fire, and all I'd done was click send. I stayed in bed a little longer that morning, sipping coffee slowly, letting the chaos roll in through my phone. The group chat exploded first, dozens of unread messages. Has anyone seen this? Is this real? Oh my God. My heart didn't race. In fact, I felt oddly still, like I was finally breathing in clean air after months of holding my breath. No more secrets, no more pretending, just the truth, playing out in living rooms all across the block. By 8 the replies got personal. Is that Daniel? Is that Natalie? How could they? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence said more than any message could. I imagined them both, phone screens glowing in their hands, watching their little affair unravel on loop. Natalie's perfectly curated image as the sweet, harmless neighbor? Gone. Daniel's charming, devoted husband act? Dismantled in under 5 minutes. No screaming, no confrontation. Just a quiet public exposure, surgical and unrelenting. And everyone had a front row seat. Even Natalie's husband chimed in. One short message that said everything. We need to talk. I don't know what happened in their house that morning, but I imagined broken glass, slammed doors, maybe even suitcases dragged out to the curb. As for Daniel, he didn't text me. Not at first. Maybe he was still trying to find a way to explain the unexplainable. Or maybe he was just stunned that I had beaten him at his own game. Either way, I wasn't waiting. I had already moved past pain. I was somewhere else now, where truth isn't just power, it's protection. By mid-morning, people stopped pretending they hadn't watched it. I could feel the shift on the street, curtained windows, sidelong glances, whispers behind clipped hedges. I took a walk just to see. The air felt electric, like before a thunderstorm. I passed Mrs. Callahan, who usually stopped to chat about her begonias. This time, she just gave me a stiff nod, eyes wide, as if I were holding a weapon instead of a cup of tea. And in a way, I was. Truth can be more cutting than any blade when wielded by someone who's done being lied to. The messages kept rolling in. Some silent, just heart emojis or shocked faces. Others long, impassioned paragraphs from women I barely knew. "You're braver than I could ever be. I wish I'd done this when it happened to me." That surprised me. The solidarity. The silent army of women who had once stood exactly where I stood, but kept it quiet. Their pain tucked behind smiles and polite small talk. Not me. Not this time. I wasn't just calling out an affair, I was shining a light on the mold people pretend not to see. Around noon, Daniel finally showed up, stormed into the house like a man who'd been publicly executed. His face was flushed, jaw clenched. He tossed his keys on the counter like punctuation. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked him square in the eye and said, "Smile for the cameras next time." And in that moment, I saw it. The panic. The realization that I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to forgive. I had pulled back the curtain, and I wasn't planning to close it again. Daniel stood there, jaw working, like he couldn't find the right script for this scene. He was used to me being quiet, forgiving, the one who smoothed things over. But that version of me had walked out the door the moment Natalie's perfume showed up on our couch cushions. He tried again. "You humiliated me." His voice cracked, more wounded pride than real remorse. I leaned against the kitchen counter and said, without blinking, "No, you did that all by yourself. I just hit send." And just like that, the mask he wore for years slipped. Natalie disappeared. No more morning greetings, no more garden visits, no more sugary smiles. Her car was gone by the next day. I don't know if she left or if her husband sent her packing, but the silence from that house was almost satisfying. The same neighbors who used to chat with her at the mailbox now crossed the street. And Daniel? He was a ghost in his own skin, still sleeping under my roof, for now, but avoiding my eyes, walking on eggshells. His charm had nowhere left to land. No one was buying it anymore. And me? I was fine. Actually, more than fine. I slept. Deeply. For the first time in months, I felt like I owned the ground I walked on. Not because I exposed them, but because I had chosen myself, my dignity, my truth. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd collapse. But the thing about planting seeds, some of us know exactly what we're growing, and the bloom comes when they least expect it. The house is quieter now. Not the tense, tight silence that used to hang between us like fog, but something gentler. Peaceful. Like the air right after a summer storm, when everything's wet but clean. Daniel moved out 2 weeks after the video went public. No fight, no dramatic exit. Just a suitcase, a blank stare, and the soft click of the front door. I didn't follow him. Didn't watch from the window. I just stood at the sink and exhaled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt alone, but not abandoned. Natalie's house stayed empty for a while. No porch lights, no wind chimes. Just shutters drawn and an overgrown lawn that mirrored the mess she left behind. The neighborhood settled, slowly, like soil after being tilled. People waved again, cautiously. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. I had said what needed saying, without ever opening my mouth. And that, in itself, became its own kind of reputation. Not the scorned wife, not the woman left behind, but the one who saw everything, and handled it with spine and grace. One morning, I stepped into the garden with pruning shears in one hand and coffee in the other. The rosemary was thriving. So were the tomatoes. I ran my fingers through the basil and smiled. This garden had seen it all. It had watched lies bloom and secrets rot. But it had also held the beginning of my freedom. So I started replanting. Nothing dramatic. Just color. A few wildflowers. Some lavender. Something new. Something mine. And as I dug into the dirt, I realized I wasn't cleaning up a mess. I was planting a beginning. The divorce was clean. Easier than I expected, really. Daniel didn't fight for the house. Didn't push back on what I asked for. I think part of him knew he didn't deserve to. Or maybe he was just too humiliated to drag it out in court. Either way, I walked away with what mattered. My name. My home. My peace. I even got the dog, not that he'd ever walked her. And when the papers arrived, I signed them without ceremony. No tears, no champagne. Just a quiet moment in the kitchen, my hand steady, my heart still. It's funny, after everything, people started treating me differently. Not with pity, with respect. Like I'd done something bold they couldn't quite say out loud. Women stopped me at the market. One even slipped me a note in the baking aisle that simply read, "Thank you." That moved me more than I expected. Because what I did wasn't about vengeance. Not really. It was about ending the silence. About making sure no one mistook my stillness for weakness again. I had protected myself in the most visible way possible. And it echoed. Then one afternoon, a moving truck pulled into the driveway next door. A new couple. Fresh faces, youngish, full of nervous laughter as they carried in boxes. I watched from my garden bench, sipping iced tea, listening to them argue about where to put the grill. The woman caught my eye and smiled. I smiled back. Just enough. Not an invitation, just an acknowledgement. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid. But I had learned. And this time the fence between us would be more than just wood. It would be boundary. Earned and honored. Some evenings I still sit out back, barefoot in the grass, watching the light change across the yard. It's a different kind of quiet now, the kind that hums instead of haunts. I water the new flowers, trim back the old growth, and take my time. No more checking my phone, no more wondering where he is. Just the sound of wind through the rosemary and the steady rhythm of my own breath. Healing, I've learned, isn't loud. It's not grand or dramatic. It's slow, honest, sometimes messy, but always forward. I don't look back with regret, not anymore. I gave that marriage everything I had. And when the truth knocked the air out of me, I found a way to breathe again anyway. Not through fury, not through revenge, through clarity, through the decision to stop protecting the wrong people. And in doing so, I protected myself. I think that's what strength really is. Not how loudly you fight, but how deeply you reclaim what's yours. Your voice, your space, your worth. Quietly. Completely. Now, when I glance across the fence, it's not with suspicion or bitterness. It's just a look, a moment, a breath of peace. Because the garden isn't what it used to be. It's something new. Something stronger. Something mine. And if there's one thing I'll never forget, it's this. They thought the garden was theirs to play in. They forgot who planted it,